Okay, hello chess players. In this video I'm going to show a pretty interesting line that you can play in the King's Indian. It happens after d4, d5, d4, knight f6, c4, g6, knight c3, bishop g7, e4, d6, knight f3, castles kingside, bishop e2, e5, castles, knight c6, d5, knight e7, and then white plays the move pawn to b4. And I'm going to show you kind of an interesting way that you can play this, where maybe you can get a lot of quick wins. Anyways, if you like content like this and want to see more of it, please hit that subscribe button and click on your notification icon. So I actually put out a video about this opening years ago, and somehow it got restricted because, like, I think the name of this move, which I'm not going to say in the video because apparently the name of this opening, I think, is what got restricted. It's named after a military implement that people don't even use anymore, but it was a very common military implement used back in World War One. But I won't say the name of it because I'm pretty sure that's what ended up getting the video restricted, was just the use of that word. But you can look up the name of it. I don't know another name for this move actually before. We'll call it the mainline King's Indian defense. People play pawn to b4. But anyways, this mainline move in the King's Indian defense, beginning with the move pawn to b4, is one of the big difficulties that black actually has in the King's Indian defense. This move was shutting down the King's Indian defense for quite a while. The idea is to play b4 and to eventually play c5. And the person that really started bringing this opening back was Hikora Nakamura. Started managing to get wins with the black pieces against this move, and he did it by just, he just kind of started cold-bloodedly retreating the knight to e8 and then playing f5 and just playing the normal King's Indian plans. And apparently there was a lot more in those positions than people actually thought. Previously, people just thought that white's position was way too fast and you weren't going to be able to, beat white on the king side before he beat you on the queen side. And Nakamura showed that there was a few more resources there than people thought there were. Anyways, this position is still a problem, and even like with the Nakamura games, like the main lines of this are still somewhat a problem. But there is a cute way that you can face this particular move. You can start with the move knight h5, and this is actually the old main line. People would play knight h5 with the idea of playing knight f4, and then the way that people started meeting this was people were playing rook e1. Basically, the idea is now they can meet knight to f4, and then when you take, the rook is on the file that the pawn is on, and it's attacking the center, and, this is a good thing. So, generally speaking, you shouldn't continue with knight to f4 here, so people continued with f5 here, and then we have knight to g5, which attacks this knight on the h5 square, and then you bring your knight back to f6, and you put pressure on e4. And now here there's essentially two moves that people try. There's pawn to f3, and there's bishop f3, and they're both supposed to lead to slight edge. They're both supposed to lead to slight edge white. Now, before Nakamura came along, people were still kind of doggedly playing this position, and Timur Rajabov was introducing the move king to h8 as sort of a de facto improvement here. He was trying to play king h8, and he was making progress with this move, trying to sort of approach this from sort of a positional perspective. But it was still kind of clear that white had, some sort of advantage, which is what led to Nakamura just abandoning this line completely and trying the line instead with knight to e8, just being a lot more straightforward about the King's Indian kingside attack and just going for it in the most traditional way. But there is, like, another option. There's a third option that's kind of interesting. You can throw in the move a5, and it's not so clear that a5 hurts you. And actually, you can throw in the move a5 against bishop f3 or f3. And again, like, even if you just look at the main lines, even if white responds perfectly to the move a5, it's not at all clear that the move a5 actually hurts you in any way. But what's cool about a5 is a5 essentially sets up a really cool trap. The idea is if they play this move, bishop to a3, you have at your disposal this really cute trap here. You have a captures b4, bishop captures b4, and then this move h6. And the point of h6 is white does not have a good move. Normally, the idea of bringing this knight to g5 is so that white can bring the knight to e6, and then when the knight plants itself on e6, we take it, white takes back, and then white gets a thorn pawn presence on the e6 square. And this is supposed to be annoying to deal with, and it actually is, and it probably gives white a slight edge if he can maintain that thorn pawn presence. In this case, if white continues with knight e6, we still take it, And then after d takes, black has at his disposal, pause the video, see if you can find it, c5, just trapping the bishop. The bishop on b4 is now hanging, and it does not have an escape square. It does not have a way to get out without getting captured on the very next move. So black is effectively up a piece and black is winning. Now, I've actually played this several times in tournament practice. When I was actively playing the King's Indian, I got to this position on multiple occasions. I had a whole bunch of people find the move, knight h3, but unfortunately for white is still probably completely lost after just f takes e5, knight takes, bishop h3 takes, and then simply knight f5. And I've played this position before. This, in many ways, this is almost worse than losing the piece, because black's position is so easy to play here. The kingside attack almost plays itself. And of course, these lines are equally playable in the f3 lines as well. If they continue with f3 instead of bishop f3, you can, of course, instead of king h8, you can also include the move a5 here. And it's essentially the same thing. If they play bishop to a3, you have takes, and then you have h6. The knight, in this case, is almost more forced to go to e6. This is just somehow so much worse. But then takes, and then we have c5 again, winning this bishop. And again, it's essentially the same exact trap that people are falling for. Now, I mean, you don't have to play chess this way. Of course, you can, follow Rajabov's plan with king h8. And of course, it is important to know what best play is. If you play a5 in this position, or if you play a5 after, say, f5, knight f3, we'll say bishop f3, and we'll have a5 in the other position, it's really best for them to just take it, to play b takes a5. And after b takes a5, you kind of have two options available. Like, you can still play h6, and this is a little unclear. Like, knight e6, bishop e6, d e6, rook a5 is possible. a4, f takes e4, knight e4, queen c8 is very unclear position. So this is a possibility you can aim for. But also after b takes a5, you can just play rook takes a5, and then let's say a4. And now I think you just revert back to Rajabov's plan. You revert back to something like king h8. And the positions aren't that dissimilar from the main lines that you would experience in other places. So, like, for example, they're going to play bishop a3, knight takes e4, knight on c takes e4 takes, knight takes e4, knight f5, bishop b4, rook back to a6, c5, and then knight d4 is pretty close to equal, according to my preparation. But again, it shouldn't be too surprising. These positions aren't too dissimilar from sort of Rajabov's idea of playing king h8. It's just that we've thrown in the move a5, ba5, rook a5. So I think if you play the King's Indian defense and you're worried about getting shut down by this b4 followed by c5 move, I think you can play the old main line, and I think you can throw in this move a5. And I really don't think it's going to hurt you. You're going to win a lot of quick games because of this trap involving bishop a3, a captures b4. And when you don't win a lot of quick games, what you do is you basically, after the correct move, which is b takes a5, rook takes a5, and then pawn to a4, you revert back to this sort of Timur Rajabov approach of playing king to h8. Because after you play king to h8, it's a lot more difficult for them to play knight e6, and Rajabov, basically proves this in a lot of his games. When knight e6 get played after king h8, you have more squares to maneuver your knights back to, and you have more ways to harvest the pawn on the e6 square. So it makes it harder for the knight to just sort of jump in there. And of course, if you omit playing pawn to h6 yourself completely, as I recommend in this line, where you basically just keep taking on e4, you're omitting pawn to e6 completely, and it just makes life a lot more difficult for white, because your plan is just to eventually plant your own knight on the d4 square. You have a good outpost, and you should have complete equality here. So anyways, that's my recommendation against this main line, King's Indian defense line, is what we're calling it. So this is my recommendation on a trap and a novelty, and how you can play against this mainline King's Indian defense and get a good game with black. We'll make that the title of the video. How to play against the mainline's King's Indian defense and get a good game with black. So anyways, I hope you found this video helpful. I hope you found it useful. I hope you learned something new about chess and can use some of these ideas in your own games. Thank you very much for watching.